Hi, it's me again. What was bad got even worse. In recent days, one of the biggest scandals involving retirees and pensioners of the NSS has come to light. The deficit, according to surveys, exceeds 6 billion reais, with 4 million elderly people robbed. And most of the victims are from the north and northeast. But everyone already knows that. What they haven't told you is that the current scandal was 6 billion. Today, with a new report from the CGU, it showed that just in 2023, 35,000 people complained about fraud, and the amount involved was 90 billion.
90 billion!
We are facing the biggest corruption scandal in the history of our country. And the scam was as follows. Retirees were enrolled without consent, had amounts deducted directly from their paychecks, or took out loans they never requested. And then, when they complained, nothing happened. We are talking about the embezzlement of billions from sick and elderly people. Money that should be in the pockets of those who work their whole lives and now depend on their pensions to live. And of course, they will spread the narrative that it all started with the previous government. And have you noticed that in the past government, everything was the president's fault? And in this government, nothing is the president's fault? But look how interesting. Investigations showed that irregular deductions had been practiced for years, which led the Bolsonaro government in 2019 to introduce Provisional Measure 871, precisely to combat this type of fraud in deductions. It required unions and associations to prove every 2 years that the retiree was indeed authorizing that deduction. Guess who was against it? Correct? The left. As if that wasn't enough, in 2022, with votes from the left, they overturned this law. And what do you think happened in the following years? Bingo! It was exactly after overturning this protection mechanism against fraud that there was this absurd increase in improper deductions, or in plain Portuguese, an absurd increase in theft against the elderly. Drawing it out because I know some people only understand it this way. 2019, Bolsonaro makes a law to protect these elderly from fraud. 2022, the left overturns this law in Congress. 2023 and 24, explosion of frauds. And are people still surprised by this? Wasn't it Alckmin who said the thief wants to return to the scene of the crime? And in fact, it did return. Since the beginning of Lula's government, representatives from the Ministry of Social Security have participated in at least 15 meetings with entities that are now under investigation. In fact, Minister Carlos Lupi himself and the former president of the INSS, Alessandro Stefanutti, attended 8 of these meetings. The entity that participated the most in meetings with the ministers was CONTAC, precisely the organization that stole the most money from retirees. And the scandal is even more serious. The CGU audit report revealed that, in many cases, authorizations for deductions were made in the name of people who were not even able to express their will. Absurd situations were found, such as people with severe disabilities, unable to sign any document, indigenous people living in remote villages who cannot read or write, and even retirees who do not live in Brazil. Stealing from someone is already terrible, but stealing from people in this situation is being certain that nothing will happen to you. It's no wonder that the INSS's own report shows that the government was aware and knew how to stop the deductions since 2023. The Federal Court of Accounts also knew about the complaint since 2023. Since that time, they could have helped the people who were victims, but the trial was stalled for over a year by a TCU minister appointed by Lula. And the union under investigation was run by Lula's brother, and the son of Lewandowski, a minister under Lula, is a lawyer for another entity accused of INSS fraud. It's the country of coincidences. In other words, they met with the investigated entities, were warned, admitted they knew, and ignored it. They pretended not to see. Now, with the pressure from the scandal, the Lula government just replaced the minister and that's it. No consequences for him? Funny, isn't it? If a poor person makes a mistake with the zip code in their registration, it's fraud. But if the system diverts billions, they just replace the person in charge. The same person who was also replaced by Dilma in 2011 for corruption in his ministry. That's right. Lula chose Carlos Lupi, a guy with a history of corruption, to manage the money of the elderly and the sick. And after 14 years, he returns and falls again in the same way. All this is happening, and do you know what the government's solution is? The INSS will use the people's money and return the money to retirees and pensioners. In other words, the victims will compensate the victims' losses. And the criminals, Nicholas, they will remain free without punishment. What a beautiful democracy. They steal, and when we find out, they send the bill for the Brazilian people to pay. That makes it easy to steal. It's the perfect crime. Okay, Nicholas, but what are you doing about it? I and the opposition have presented a bill to definitively prohibit this type of automatic deduction from the INSS. And furthermore, I need your help to request the installation of the CPI for the retirees' thefts. And it will be in this commission that we will investigate more deeply and be able to imprison those responsible for this. And then make them return this money, not have you pay this bill. Go to the social media of Hugo Mota and Davi Alcolumbre and ask for this commission to be installed. And finally, urgently go to your bank or check your account statement on your phone to see if there are any unauthorized deductions. Only then will you know if you are being robbed or not, and request the immediate cancellation of this theft. And yes, time passes quickly. I know many don't think about the future, but one day it will come. And on that day, let's have done something to arrive here differently from what we are experiencing now. No one can stand a country that only discourages us with every news, but to arrive here differently, we need to do something different now. Because the party that promised to take care of the people, a president who positioned himself as the father of the poor, ended up exploiting those they swore to defend the most. But they only got there because many believed in them. And until when? Because when we get here, it might be too late to change Brazil.